NASCAR's back in a big way at their biggest race of the season at Daytona for the opening event for the 4 top series in NASCAR. The ARCA Menard Series, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, the NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series, and of course the NASCAR Cup Series with the Daytona 500 this coming Sunday. Thanks for checking out the NASCAR News Zone, where we're going to cover many stories that are going on in the world of NASCAR. Some of the articles that we will discuss are Kyle Larson creating a team for his kids in micro sprints, how SVG is being hit hardest by the NASCAR schedule and playoff changes, and Kyle Busch's criticism of the return of the chase after being a beneficiary of the playoff format and winning his championships in that. These stories and more will be in the NASCAR News Zone presented by myself and also the great George. Click on the timestamp below to see which story you'd want to see most. And thanks for subscribing and liking all the content that we provide.
In lieu of trying to defend his 2025 Cup Series championship and become a 3-time series champion, Kyle Larson has added team owner as a team owner to his kids, to his busy racing endeavors, not just as a driver running a series. Now he owns a micro sprint racing team for his 11-year-old son Owen, his 7-year-old daughter Audrey, to race those more during 2026. He's concerned about his youngest, Cooper, 3 years old, possibly jumping in. He's quoted as saying, "In a perfect world, I would love for Cooper not to race. He's the craziest for sure of the 3. I think he'll be the most expensive probably because I'm sure he'll be tearing up the most equipment. So we'll see if we can keep him out of it," end quote. In terms of something else that he wants to get over or get around is his bad luck that he's had at the Daytona 500. Winless in 12 starts. It'll be his 13th try this coming Sunday. Larson said, "I would imagine the feeling of winning it would be extremely massive if it ever happens." Quote. Daytona is the only regular NASCAR venue in which he doesn't have a top 5 finish. He crossed the line in 20th last year in the 500. He said, "Prior to last year, I just get caught up in wrecks and whatnot. I wouldn't say I have any more confidence this year than I did last year. I just hope that we have the same sort of good fortune as we did last year. Maybe it can be a few spots better to get a win." Of course, other veteran drivers that have been winless in this race, Kyle Busch will be attempting his 21st start on Sunday and has been close, led the race at the end of regulation a couple of years ago. Brad Keselowski, 0 for 16, coming now off of a leg injury, and was in position to possibly win the race in the last few years as well. Both champions of this sport like Larson. Other people noted like Tony Stewart, Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin. He had Terry Labonte, Bobby Labonte, other guys that are in the NASCAR Hall of Fame that haven't won the Daytona 500. On the flip side of that, it took David Pearson 15 tries, Kurt Busch, recently elected in the Hall of Fame, 16, and then Dale Earnhardt 20 to win it. So it's something where Kyle Larson goes and says, you look at guys like Mark Martin, Tony Stewart have been super successful in our sport and never got one. Kyle Busch is still trying. The more that goes by, the more pressure that ramps up every February. Though in terms of the anxiety of it, he's a racer through and through. He's looking forward to the opportunity to not only defend his championship, but possibly get this Daytona 500. He won't be running a double, running Indy in the Coke 600 this year, so that'll be a help. Ryan Hunter-Reay's gotten that ride for this year in the Indy cars, but I think he's going to be pretty occupied with helping his kids out and running that team. But we'll see how that all goes as the season rolls on. In his rookie campaign in 2025, in the NASCAR Cup Series, Shane Van Gisbergen was able to win 5 road course races and finish 12th in the season standings based on the playoff format that existed. Of course, now there's a new format, a chase format, where it'll be based strictly on points, where the top 16 in points will advance into a 10-race playoff at that point, or 10-race chase. However, another thing that we have to keep in mind is for SVG, the tracks that are on the schedule, some of the tracks have changed and where they're located within the season. Now the Chicago Street Course is missing. Circuit Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City is also missing for this year. So those are 2 of the races where he won. The Watkins Glen race has been moved back into May, the month of May, after being in August and September in recent years. There will be a new race at San Diego on a naval base on Father's Day weekend. So that's still kind of like a street or temporary road course. Chicagoland has been moved in for the street course, the Chicago Street Course. Sonoma will be the week after Father's Day, which he won at last year. And then the Charlotte Roval, of course, has also been changed back to the Oval for 2026. Now, granted, SVG as a champion has been able to win in multiple forms of motorsports. He's a multi-time V8 Supercars champion in Australia, won 80 times there, won 3 championships, won the Bathurst 1000, has come over and been able to run and learn on ovals and what is now the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the Truck Series a little bit even, and now in the Cup Series last year. He's finished 10th on an oval at Martinsville late in the year last year. And then you consider Trackhouse Racing with some of the adjustments with like supports, that I would venture to believe that a driver of Shane Van Gisbergen's caliber can compete and make it into that 16, even with a reduction in the number of road courses that'll be on the schedule, the fact that there won't be any road courses in the chase. Those things aside, Shane Van Gisbergen came here because it was a challenge, it was something new, and it was something different to have to go and race on ovals and be able to compete against some of the best oval racers in a stock car in the world. And even with the changes in the schedule, even with the adjustments he'll have to make because of the new format, Shane Van Gisbergen has proved he can figure it out and do a great job. YouTube sensation Garrett Mitchell, aka Cletus McFarland, has been approved to run the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series opener for Nice Motorsports later this week. The big times YouTube star ran ARCA races for Rhett Jones Racing last year and will continue to do so this year. Wrecked in Daytona last year, but finished in the top 10 at Talladega. Had an incident at Charlotte, but was able to get further experience in other races. In terms of the field, it was connected with Travis Pastrana, his good friend, who is also going to be racing in the race for Nice Motorsports. Sponsorship also connected to it, and the whole engagement piece. The friend of the late Greg Biffle will be running a number 4 with a similar font to what Greg Biffle had on his cars while he was winning cup races, and something to see. The connection and everything that he had for Biff and what he wanted to do to move forward in his career. He was thinking that he was not going to continue his career after the plane crash that took the lives of Greg Biffle, his wife, 2 kids, and friends, which they were on their way to go and visit Cletus McFarland and family when that happened. Cletus has, of course, said, "Be like Biff" and "Do it for Dale," amongst other catchphrases and things that he says. And famous, his interviews, post-wreck interview after the ARCA race at Daytona last year, I think really opened eyes and gained him even more followers than he already had. But for Garrett Mitchell trying to go out there and run a truck at Daytona in what is going to be a very deep and loaded field, it's not just the fact that there's going to be, he's going to be in there and it'll be his first career truck start, but you're including the likes of former Daytona 500 winners Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. You're going to have three-time Cup Series champion Tony Stewart racing in this race. I mean, there's going to be a lot of names here, people who are competing for this championship, people who, Carson Hocevar, who's a Cup Series regular, John Hunter Nemechek, Cup Series regular, and Corey LaJoie, who's trying to make the field for the Daytona 500, former series champions in Ty Majeski and Ben Rhodes. So plenty of really strong contenders in this field. So let us see what Cletus McFarland is able to do this coming weekend. While many people have expressed their pleasure and happiness with the reintroduction of the chase format in 2026 for NASCAR's top three major series, one person who has provided a alternative view is two-time Cup Series champion and one of the winningest drivers in the history of NASCAR, and Kyle Busch. He is quoted as saying, "I thought we got away from it for a reason in the past, so I'm not real sure why we went back to it," end quote. Going further, the reason why we sort of went away from it was obviously Jimmy Johnson's dominance, number one, but I feel like number two is there were times where guys like myself who would have one bad race or two that would then knock them out of a championship, basically. Like I finished third one year, I finished fifth another year just from having a wreck in one race. Like Talladega, you get caught up in a wreck and boom, you can't make up enough points to get back to the championship, but you're going to finish third in points. I got wrecked at Kansas one year and that put me fifth in the championship, I think. So it's just stuff like that I don't really agree with it, end quote. So considering Kyle Busch benefited greatly from the playoff format, missing races after a leg injury he suffered in a O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Daytona. Accident there knocked him out for about 10 weeks. Had to get back in the car, had to win a race and then get into the top 30 in points. Did so at Sonoma and then further advanced to get himself in a position to compete for the championship. Then had to do so in the 10 races and go out and won at Homestead Miami Speedway for his championship in 2015, and then was able to do the same thing again in 2019 without missing any races to validate that first championship. In terms of the fact that he's been around for the chase format in the past, the start of his career was around the time of the start of the chase, and he's ran through different versions of it. He went and said, with the racing the way that it is today and everybody running over everybody all the time, you might see everybody, all 16 of us, have a bad race, end quote. So if all of us have a bad race, then that could sort of be construed as your throwaway and you've got to be good in the other 9. But who's to say? We don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But obviously everybody's going to look toward, the regular season, maximizing all the stage points, things like that, points racing basically, and that lends itself to having to qualify good on Saturdays in order to be up there, up front, holding onto your track position for the first stage, getting that stage point. That's probably our number one holdback with RCRs, that we don't tend to qualify good and hold on to our first stage point. That's what really got hurt throughout the season, is just our stage point and how much we have there. So we got to get better on all that. So we'll see. That'll be something to look at as we go through the 2026 Cup Series season, is how RCR improves in qualifying and how the 8 and 3 cars perform early in races and in general during when stage points are provided. And based on that, maybe we might see Kyle Busch win again for the first time in a few years. With all the changes going on in NASCAR and updates to racetracks, one of their more famous racetracks is going to get renovations. That will be Talladega Super Speedway, the track that was made in the late 60s and is the longest track on the schedule in terms of an oval, with 2.66 miles and the high banks and the rowdy crowds and everything that comes with speedway racing and higher speeds. They're looking to make those modernizations and also make it a possible contender for the final race of the year. Ben Kennedy has been quoted as saying his belief is the organization balancing respect for its history with an aggressive approach towards future growth. That strategy includes moving the championship race, at least for this year and next year. It'll be at Homestead Miami Speedway, but in future years they are looking to start a rotation a la like the Super Bowl. Multiple cities and municipalities have already expressed interest in hosting Cup Series finale. The project aligns with NASCAR's goal of improving fan experience and making tracks more viable for year-round use beyond race weekends. I think based on the infield alone, you could probably put a football field in there and have a college football game or some other exhibition game, or you could have baseball there or something like that. Ben Kennedy is also, you look at the San Diego street race at the Naval Base Coronado, connected to, of course, the 250th anniversary of the United States ratifying of the Constitution in 1776. Kennedy has framed those kind of moves as part of a larger effort to keep the schedule fresh while broadening the sport's reach. Speaking on that, Julie Geese, who was part of the Chicago street race, will continue overseeing the Chicago region while also managing scheduling initiatives. Kennedy said that he's already working on a 27 schedule, including future of the Clash and the championship rotation, while also evaluating a couple of potential new venues and several additional projects. Teams are collaborating with NASCAR on upgraded hospitality offerings aimed at improving experiences for VIPs and sponsors. Some owners are continuing to explore structural changes, including the possibility of a budget cap. That's coming in after the permanent charters were given out post lawsuit. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on during this season. On the manufacturer side, NASCAR is committed to their three major brands on Chevy, Ford, Toyota. They're bringing back Stellantis with the Ram brand and the Truck Series with the hopes of bringing Dodge back to Cup. And they're working on Honda to possibly be a fifth OEM. Honda's, along with Chevy, has reaffirmed their commitment to the NTT IndyCar Series. So that's something that we'll have to look at in regards to their involvement here in NASCAR in the future, based on some of the things they got going on. With Chevrolet introducing a new body into the NASCAR Cup Series for 2026, former Cup Series champion, NASCAR on Fox announcer Kevin Harvick has expressed some concerns on his podcast, Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour. He's quoted as saying Chevrolet has a new body. They're guessing right now. They've done no more than guess at this point. They can tell you whatever they want, but they're going to have to work out the balance of that body. End quote. They might be great on super speedways, might be great on short tracks, they might be great on intermediates. But it's going to take time to get it worked out on all tracks. They'll probably hit it somewhere. We just don't know where yet. And so the Chevrolet body is a new Camaro ZL1, even though the Camaro is not being made in the US anymore and being sold. Chevrolet has put out a new body style because it's a limited edition, and Ford is also doing something similar, albeit their Mustang is still being made and they're competing all over the world in motorsports, and they're going to have a new body style coming for 2027. But Rick Hendrick, of course, the biggest Chevrolet team in NASCAR and owner of that organization, he was quoted as saying, "It won't be perfect right out of the gate, but I'm excited about having a new car with a little more downforce and a little more power," end quote. So figure if Mr. Hendrick feels like the new body style will be a improvement, considering he's coming off of winning a Cup Series championship last year and having two drivers in the Final Four, and generally having at least one representative in the Final Four in the recent years in the playoff format. The chase format definitely worked in his favor as well, since Jimmy Johnson won 5 consecutive championships, and then Tony Stewart, who was driving Hendrick cars and chassis and engines, won a championship in 2011. I would assume that Mr. Hendrick isn't that concerned. And with the 36 race format, 26 and 10, it gives time for Chevrolet to go and put themselves in a position to figure out the body and to figure out the aero, downforce, etc., and be able to make the best platform to perform when it counts in the last 10 races of the chase. And it might end up being something that's an advantage for the likes of Chase Elliott, for the likes of Alex Bowman, or even William Byron, who got himself in a position to win a championship last year but came up just a little bit short. But we'll see if any of those guys, or Kyle Larson, can go out there and get a championship here in 2026 with the new Camaro. Someone who comes into the Cup Series with a lot of hype in 2026 is probably rookie sensation Connor Zilisch. An article written by the AP's Jenna Fryer says, and utilizes other people's quotes, as saying that Connor Zilisch might be the biggest rookie coming into this Cup Series since Jeff Gordon did in 1993 at age 20 and then 21. He had turned that during the Speed Weeks, won the Clash in 1993 as a rookie, and competed and finished in the top 5 in the Daytona 500 in his, what was only then his second career start. But for Connor Zilisch, coming off of winning 10 races in the, what was then the Xfinity Series, now the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, coming close to winning a championship, losing to his good friend Jesse Love at the end, competing for Junior Motorsports, moving over from there to Trackhouse Racing full-time as a Cup Series driver. Of course, he's had that support for the last few years, running in different stock car series, but also proving himself in different forms of motorsports, whether it's starting in go-karts a few years ago, to being an IMSA, to driving all different type Trans Am cars, etc., etc. Zilisch has proven that he's very fast, very talented, very mature, able to handle a lot of adversity. Got hurt last year a couple of times and was able to go back and still be able to do what he needed to do to go and compete, and that was something AJ Allmendinger, talking about Connor Zilisch, said, "I would have to say Jeff Gordon, honestly, in terms of the hype about Zilisch. There was Joey and the whole sliced bread thing, but I think straight up hype, Connor is a deal and has already delivered. He's jumping in everything and performing at very high levels," end quote. He will make his full-time debut, of course, at the Daytona 500. He's ran a few races last year in the Cup Series. Only attended the race for the very first time 4 years ago when Austin Cindric won the event. So it's interesting He's quoted in the article as saying, "I think it's very cool that people think that highly of me when you're getting compared to Kyle Busch and Joey Logano. There's nothing to complain about. They have 5 Cup championships between them," Zilisch said. "If I can have a career half as good as either of them, I think that would be a successful career. But I've got a lot of time to get to their level. I mean, 4 years ago I was in the grandstands for the Daytona 500, and I think now I'm going to be in the race is just crazy," end quote. So it's something that we will check out, and he's been able to race in all these different types of cars. IndyCar driver for Team Penske and former Supercars champion Scott McLaughlin is quoted saying he's just very mature, but there's definitely times when you talk to him and you realize, oh yeah, you're 18, end quote. Like, he's young, but when he's on track, he's very smart and understands how to go about it in a respectful way. He's got raw speed, he's got no fear because he's young, but at the same time, dudes like that are very temperamental. You hope a guy like that has the right environment, and it looks like a good environment for him with Trackhouse. So he will definitely be in a position, and he has the support of his teammates, including Ross Chastain and Shane Van Gisbergen. And for Connor Zilisch, the sky's the limit for his talent, ability, and what he could do in NASCAR Cup Series racing. So we'll be able to find out with the rest of you.